This is How to Write with Mr. Reynolds. Today we're going to be talking about the form of poetry called seven poetry. Now this one is a bit crazy. In fact, it's supposed to be humorous and very silly. If you guys remember as kids, the story of the 5 little monkeys jumping on the bed, and the first one fell off and bumped his head, the second one did this, and then it kept going on and on. Well, that's kind of the idea of this style of poetry. And so the 7 poetry will begin with a group of 7. So it could be 7 pieces of chocolate sitting in a box. It could be 7 birds flying in the sky. It could be 7 little rocks, something about, I don't know, found in the ground. Or it could be lots of different ideas that you could come up with based upon your interest. Maybe it's a spaceship, maybe it's a jump rope, maybe it's a basketball, maybe it's a teammate, maybe it's a color or a crayon in a box, maybe it is an animal or some other toy that you might have in your playroom. And so it could be any group of 7. It could be 7 eggs that are sitting in the fridge. And so, you know, there's all sorts of different ideas that you could use to come up with to write a poem. Remember, write about things that you know or have experienced or are familiar with. That makes your poetry come alive, and it helps you to be able to express your thoughts and your ideas in a much more pleasant and easier method to be able to write about. And so these 7 poems are going to begin with the first line mentioning what that group of 7 is. So you might have a group of 7 little ducklings, okay? Then tell what they're doing. The 7 little ducklings are floating in the pond, okay? Then you're going to use the next 2 lines, so lines 3 and 4, are going to tell about what happened to the first one. Okay, so you're going to use the 2 lines to tell about what happened to the first duckling. Maybe it wandered off because it saw something else. Okay, so the 7 little ducklings that were swimming in the pond, the first one wandered off because it saw a swan. And so that might be what happened to that first one. Then the next 5 lines are actually going to describe what happened to the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, and the 6th in your group or whatever your series is. And so that's what's going to happen for those particular lines. Then the last line is last 2 lines actually are going to wrap up your poem by concluding with describing what happens to the 7th one. And so finalize your poem by the 7th one did this, or this happened to the 7th one, and that's how it impacted or made everybody feel, or that's just what happened in your group. So there's going to be those lines in there. Now remember, those lines don't have to rhyme. Those lines are going to tell a story about what happened to your group of 7. And there is a form in what you're supposed to put in each line. So just a reminder, introduce your 7, tell what they're doing, then spend 2 lines telling about the first one and what happened to it, then spend the next 5 lines, just 1 each, telling about numbers 2 through 6, and then the last 2 lines are going to explain the last one and just wrap it all up. So here are my attempts at a 7 poetry. So I'm sitting outside and it's getting closer to the evening hours, and there are mosquitoes that are all around. Okay, and so I entitled mine 7 Mosquitoes. There were 7 mosquitoes swarming around my head. The first one met my slapping hand, and now that thing is dead. The second one got sprayed with off, The third was swatted away. The fourth one inhaled citronella. The fifth one ran into a cobweb. The sixth one was eaten by a bat. The last one, it found a juicy vein and drank until it exploded. And so now I've wrapped it all up and it told what happened to that last one and what happened to each one of those. So that's my 7 poem. Here's one that I created just based upon current events. There were 7 students in the classroom on Zoom. The first one couldn't get in. He was stuck in the waiting room. The second one couldn't get her mic to work. And the third had video problems. The fourth one was muted because of background noise. The fifth one drew all over the screen. The sixth one made us all dizzy by walking around. And the seventh one is ready, but oops, our time is up. And so it wraps up the poem again with that closing line. So remember, you're going to have an introduction, you're still going to have that body in the middle, and a conclusion. So don't forget that introduction, the body, and the conclusion really do help to tell a story. And so using these parts to create a 7 poem, hopefully you have a lot of fun with this. Enjoy creating, and don't forget, if you create it, remember to share it. Thank you and have fun writing.